Hello and welcome to another Royal Reviewer channel episode, and today we're going to be continuing talking about the royal family. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for watching my previous video where we spoke about all the different royal stories that happened on Sunday, because as we know, Sunday is it's that day when the newspapers and the press save up all their meatiest stories, especially if they have an expose or an exclusive, and they put it out on Sunday. They always save it. So if you like, I could make the Sunday video a regular feature. So we wait until all the news comes out and then I talk about it. And that video would probably go out round about 6 or 7 p.m. in the UK on a Sunday, depending on what I'm doing that day. So if that's something that you'd like for me to carry on doing, then please leave a comment. But today I have a whole host of topics before me that I'd like to speak about. And the first one is actually about Prince Andrew and what sources close to the royal family have disclosed that the late Queen, had in mind for Andrew in terms of rehabilitation, in terms of his PR and the media and what he should do. So actually, if this is true, and sources are correct, then actually it's very similar to what I've been saying that he should do from his point of view. And of course, you do have to look at things from all different angles, from all the different royal family members' sides of things. And I always said that, after all of this, it's going to be very, very difficult to come back from these fringes. I think from the fringes of royal life, where he now finds himself. Basically, he hasn't done any charity work that we've known about. I think in lockdown he did visit some kind of, it wasn't a food bank, it was where he was sorting like food parcels for distribution. That was put out on Sarah Ferguson's own Instagram account, so I didn't know he did that. But in terms of anything wider charitable work, we haven't seen him do anything, and he certainly hasn't undertaken any work on behalf of the royal family. So it seems like that the Queen thought that he should consider charitable work as a route back to public life after, of course, the fallout. And the papers and the press are still saying that they think it was £3 million, not £13 million, that he settled with Virginia. So sources close to Andrew told The Independent that the late monarch suggested the move could provide a path to redemption after stepping back from royal duties. And this is the quote. Andrew's mother suggested the route forward was taking on a charitable cause, a source told The Independent. Other members of the family agreed and saw it as his only way to rehabilitation. Now, of course, we don't know who the other family members were. I'm imagining that could have been Sarah, it could have been the York princesses, could even have been Charles, because we have heard rumours that Charles is even supportive of allowing Andrew the chance to potentially have his side of things heard in court with regards to Virginia. So friends of the Duke who now say he feels isolated on his own in Royal Lodge, Windsor. Well, again, I spoke about this last time. Royal Lodge is a huge royal home. Of course, it's owned by the Crown Estate, leased by Andrew, so he paid a lot of money for the lease and the renovation work of Royal Lodge back when he first took possession of it. It's a huge property. With the cost of living the way it is, it must be costing an absolute fortune to heat and run and staff. So, if he's feeling a bit isolated and on his own, perhaps he should downsize. He could sell back his lease, get a bit of money back from the Crown Estate, and then go somewhere else. As I proposed, I thought that Wood Farm in Norfolk on the Sandringham estate, where he stayed at Christmas with Sarah, would probably be a really good, more sizable, but still a royal residence to live at. And they're not sure what kind of work Andrew would take on, or if he would even be willing to do the penance needed, or even, of course, what charities and causes would want to be associated with him. I think that's something, to be considered. So the idea was that he should make a return to public life in a fashion similar to the disgraced government minister John Profumo, who took on charity work after public revelations of an affair with a prostitute. Oh my goodness, scandal. Andrew stopped using, of course, his HRH in January last year. Then it just carries on. Sources close to Andrew believe he hopes that overturning Miss Giuffre's claim could let him return to royal duties, but US law would require the prince to argue legal reasons for reversing the deal, including mistake or accident. Maybe that could be a route that he wishes to go down. But anyway, back to what the Queen thought. So this is kind of what I was saying anyway. I think that he should undertake low-key charitable work and even reconsider actually remarrying Sarah. I think that would show a new life. It would show that he was turning over a new leaf, starting a new life, and he could do low-key charity work. And of course, let's not forget he's in the same situation. I get not from the same reasons, but he finds himself in the same situation as Harry now. Can't use the HRH, stripped of military titles and royal duties. Now Andrew can actually earn money outside of the royal family. Will he do a Prince Harry style Oprah interview? Well, I think we've seen enough in terms of interviews from Andrew. I don't think he'd be that stupid and do another interview. Will he do a tell-all book about his life, an expose on the royal family? He may do a memoir in terms of his experiences of his life, but I doubt very much he would do an expose in the way that Harry has done. Of course, low-key business options and deals are open to him. I don't think he's going to have his own clothing range or makeup line or anything of that nature, or merchandise. But there are just regular business things that he can get into. He could get into property. He could put his money into whatever sort of business that he wants, very low key. So I think Andrew does have a future. Whether or not that is within the royal family, I do not know. And of course, if he was able to do some charity work or even start his own charitable organisation, so he doesn't have to be associated with anyone. He can just pick some causes that are very close and dear to his heart, and of course he could do that. Of course, he could do lots more work with Sarah. Sarah, of course, does lots of charitable work, and of course she has her own books out. So maybe he could write a book. I don't know. But if that is indeed what the Queen had in mind, then I agree that it would be the only way of kind of slowly at least getting some kind of redemption and rehabilitation in the public sphere. And in other news, King Charles apparently will not feature on Australia's new $5 note, the country's central bank has announced. The new design will pay tribute to the culture and history of Indigenous Australians, the Reserve Bank of Australia says. A portrait of the late Queen Elizabeth II appears on the current design of the $5 note. The Queen's death last year reignited debates about Australia's future as a constitutional monarchy. This decision by the Reserve Bank follows consultation with the Australian government, which supports this change. The bank will consult with the first Australians in designing the $5 banknote. The new banknote will take a number of years to be designed and printed. In the meantime, the current $5 banknote will continue to be issued. It will be able to be used even after the new banknote is issued. The $5 banknote is the only Australian banknote to carry the image of a British monarch. The late Queen appears on the country's coins as well, although Australia is transitioning to using an effigy of King Charles III on the coins. The RBA told the BBC it has not yet set a date for when it will reveal the new $5 design. The decision was welcomed by Aboriginal politicians and community leaders. They say that this is a massive win for the grassroots First Nations people who have been fighting to decolonise this country. In a 1999 referendum, Australian voters chose to keep the British monarch as the country's head of state. So, this decision, I think, was probably always going to happen. And of course, the $5 banknote has been the only note to feature the sovereign's head, if you like. However, it is important to remember that Charles is being kept on the coins. So his effigy will not be disappearing completely. With regards to reigniting the debate about whether Australia should remain a constitutional monarchy or not, every now and again they do have a referendum on whether or not it fits with where they are as a nation of collective peoples. So I would imagine that at some point during King Charles's reign, there will probably be another new referendum. The outcome of which I don't know, nobody knows. I imagine there would be fierce campaigning on either side. But the one thing I think we do know is that Charles, now as king, will try to re-establish links and connections that he has already built up through his work through the Commonwealth and also many Australian visits and tours that he's undertaken as Prince of Wales. So now as king, with of course the Queen Consort Camilla, I think he will be embarking at some point on an Australian tour. Will we see the likes of Queen Elizabeth, where lots of people crowded the streets to watch him pass by? I don't know. I don't really know, what the grassroots support for the monarchy is in Australia at the moment. But what we do know is that at some point that will come to the test. I don't think it will be anytime soon, but I think there probably will be another referendum within Charles's reign, which should then probably settle the matter for the next sort of 25, 30 years. Of course, 1999 was the last one, and the Australian people chose to retain the sovereign. And of course, it is important to remember that the sovereign is not a British sovereign that is sort of over the other different countries. They are a sovereign of Australia. They are, the king or queen of Australia, exactly on the same bar that they are the king and queen of the United Kingdom or of Canada or of any of the other realms. So yeah, that eventually I think will be put back to the Australian people. And of course, that would be right to do so every now and again to check that that is still how they want to be governed. But it is interesting about the $5 note. They have taken the, I suppose, opportunity or sort of pause and reflection of the passing of the late Queen to make that change. I think it's very important to note that they didn't make that change during the Queen's reign. The next topic that I want to talk about is, of course, this week, the Princess of Wales has been out in force with launching her Shaping Us campaign. Now, if you didn't know, I did speak about it a bit more at length, so I'm not going to go over it all again, but the Shaping Us campaign is about raising awareness of early years development and how we are brought up affects us as adults and carries through into later life. Hence the kind of shaping us. So I will include some photos as we talk by of all the different engagements that she has attended so far this week. Now, there's been a lot of talk at the same time about impact, and I do want to talk about the power of impact in relation to people who aren't members of the royal family doing charitable work and having impact, and members of the royal family and what that level of impact looks like. Now, one thing that I do really want to talk about is just before the Shaping Us campaign launched, I think it was the day or a couple of days before, Prince Harry and Meghan released their own impact statement for Archewell. And of course, that was over the last 2 years, and they say that they've raised, I think it was $13 million, 3 of which has been distributed. I will leave a link to the impact statement that Harry and Meghan released, I guess. I will also leave a link to the Prince and Princess of Wales's Royal Foundation actual accounts and statement, and that was from the previous year. So you'll be able to see kind of, compare and contrast. Of course, it's like comparing chalk and cheese. The Royal Foundation has been going for a number of years now. Harry and Meghan's Archewell hasn't been going that long. So on the face of it, to raise $13 million in a short space of time is good. And of course, they have 10 million left over to play with in the coming years in terms of distributing $3 million thus far. And of course, people were saying, well, what are they going to do with the previous 10 million? That is typical. Charities and organisations, non-profits do raise money they distribute some, they hold some back so that it can be distributed in the future. So I don't think that is particularly an issue. The Royal Foundation do exactly the same thing if you look at the accounts. And of course, the Royal Foundation has raised more money, does raise more money each year, but it has been going for longer. So like I say, it's like comparing chalk and cheese. Also Harry and Meghan are not a royal foundation anymore, and the Prince and Princess of Wales are. So they are very, very different. So people are going to try and compare them. And I think one of the key factors people have been trying to compare them on is, of course, impact. Now, Harry and Meghan's statement was released before the Princess of Wales's Shaping Us campaign. I do think that was deliberate. I do think it was there to kind of undermine Catherine. Now, of course, we don't know the real reason. Maybe it was just coincidence. Who knows? Could it be retaliation for having the coronation on Archie's birthday? I don't know. But it seemed quite strategic that it was released just before the Shaping Us campaign to say, hey, look, this is the level of impact that we've done. What have you done? What is your campaign going to do in terms of impact? So I think Harry and Meghan's impact has kind of drawn on lots of other organisations and charities that they have sort of helped to fund. So of course the impact that they've quoted isn't necessarily just their own impact. Of course it would be very difficult to work out what proportion of a whole charity's impact was apportioned to your contribution to it in terms, I don't know, let's just say they contributed so much to the vaccine program. Well, the whole vaccine program raised awareness and was able to distribute X amount of vaccines, but it's very difficult to work out the level of the Sussex's involvement. So it's almost like they were piggybacking on, they were piggybacking on the back of other organisations' success that they had contributed or worked with. So kind of like firefighting. I think the Sussex's approach is very much to kind of firefight. We do something, we donate a little bit of money that we've raised. We have some photos, we get a little bit of impact, and then we move on. It's very much firefighting, and one does have to ask what the longer lasting effects of that impact is. It appears like it's being done for glory, which is not the same as what the Prince and Princess of Wales are doing with lots of their charitable causes, especially around mental health. And we all know about the Heads Together work. Back here in the UK, I spoke about this last time, nobody spoke about mental health in the way that we do now prior to the Heads Together. There was not the amount of money generated for mental health causes. Now, mental health is a big topic in schools, in workplaces, and that is in part to do with William, Catherine, and of course Harry, when he was a member of the Royal Foundation, raising awareness. Didn't, of course, at the time of raising that awareness, necessarily have the impact that you could photograph and that was tangible. They didn't have a kind of tangible impact. But what has happened is, years later, almost like a decade later, mental health around the whole country has improved. It wasn't like what it is in the States, here in the UK 10 years ago. People didn't really go to therapy and talk about their problems. It was still very much, men in particular don't talk about that kind of thing. In America, it's always been, I think, a bit more open. But in the UK, it was not. And now, the younger generation are talking about their problems. Even the older generation are now talking about their problems. And that is in part to do with the power and the impact of long-term awareness. And I think there has been a little bit of meanness, a little bit of mean-spiritedness aimed at Catherine's life's work. This has been kind of billed as her life's work. And she has spent a long time really learning about the cause. Even some of the early charities that she took on in the early days of becoming Duchess of Cambridge after her marriage have all led to this moment, all this kind of learning. And I do think that this is a life's work. This is still the start. She has so much more life, more royal life left in her. I think this is just the start. And I think in 10, 15 years' time, we will be seeing the fruits of the awareness really blossoming and taking hold here in the UK and around the world. Yes, it's quite simplistic to just say, well, everyone knows that, a child's early development is really important. Well, do they? Do they really? And because funding has been cut in schools and early years provisions so much over the past 5, 6 years, I don't think people do. And I think having an awareness campaign like what the Princess of Wales is now doing, long term is going to make people almost hold politicians to account to get that funding put back in. I can see in the future politicians speaking about the early years as part of their campaigns to get elected, to put money and to put funds back in. So yes, the level of impact is not going to be there immediately. It is a long-term strategy, and of course, unlike Harry and Meghan, who are no longer constricted to, I suppose, not being able to get involved in politics, Catherine is still very much bound by those restrictions. The most power that she can do but it is powerful power, and that's the thing. It's long-term effectual power. Um, you know, Ministers and governments now talk about mental health, and I think they will be talking about the early years in 10 years time. I think it will be a really big thing, and then that will be the impact. She'll be able to tick that off and say, that's the power of the impact. So I suppose don't be fooled by glory hunters. The Prince and Princess of Wales are not trying to glory hunt. I mean, even William, with his Earthshot prize, it's a long-term strategy. It's not going to be something that's going to be impactful, that they do something now and then in 6 months' time, oh, well, here's the impact that we've got. So I do think that we need to be very, very much aware of that. Okay, another bit of kind of information that I was not expecting at all. I mean, if anything, from Prince Harry's spare book, I wasn't expecting him to, I suppose, tell fibs or, get wrong the moment where he lost his virginity. But apparently, talking to the Telegraph magazine on the day the memoir was released, and by the way, I didn't get this information on the day that the memoir was released. The media has only really taken this up over the past couple of days. Rupert Everett, the actor, has revealed, by the way, I know who the woman he lost his virginity to is. And it wasn't behind a pub, and it wasn't in this country. When asked if he was suggesting the Duke had purposefully tried to cover his tracks to protect the identity of the woman involved, he replied, I'm just putting it out there that I know. And of course, cast your mind back to the book. Harry, of course, claimed that he lost his virginity in a field behind a pub to a woman who apparently spanked his bottom, or he mounted her, and all those details that was just too much information that we did not need to know. But now Rupert Everett is saying he knows who it is. There's been a bit of a hunt in the media to kind of try and find out who this woman is. Lots of names have been linked. We've had a few denials from certain women whose names have been put out there. But Rupert Everett says that he knows. Let me know in the comment section. Do you believe Rupert, or do you think that Harry's account of his own loss of virginity is true and correct and accurate? Do let me know in the comment section below. Okay, so let's talk about the jewellery that I'm wearing today. I am, of course, wearing the Canadian maple leaf brooch, a firm favourite of the Queen, and also Catherine has worn this one as well. And I am wearing the Meander tiara, of course, one of Princess Anne's, and of course Zara Tindall wore it for her wedding. So I'm just showing you that one. And I quite like the way that it kind of sits quite elevated on my hair. So I'm hoping that you've been able to see it over my big hair. Okay, now I think I'm going to leave today's royal chat here. I imagine that there will be a load more stories on Sunday for us to talk about. I imagine there will be a lot more royal stories on Sunday for us to talk about. If there is a topic of anything that you'd like me to talk about and address on this channel, please leave a comment and I will try and address it. By the way, I know that there is a weird reflection in my glasses. It is the ring light in front of me. The best I can do, if you look, is actually tilt them so that you can't see. These are anti-glare glasses, but you still get the reflection and the glow. I will try and find a permanent location in my house to be able to do these royal chats from. So eventually, look out, there will be a proper set at some point where I can have all the lights set up properly. So thank you for bearing with at the moment. Okay, if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to share on social media, and of course, do hit the bell so that you know whenever I upload a new video. So for me, mwah to you all, and goodbye.